Good morning everyone. Today we are here for a new chapter, that is nationalism in India. Alright, we are going to study this chapter, the nationalism in India, in which we study the India's struggle for independence and the various movement that is led by the various nationalists, various leaders, and how they struggle to take freedom from the Britishers. Let us have a look on this. Okay, you know EIC, the East India Company, which has taken India under its sovereignty with the arrival of the Portuguese. First they arrived, after them few other European companies arrived, then later on the last companies that arrived for trade in India, that is English East India Company, by taking the charter, the firman, the order from the Queen Elizabeth of England, a joint venture company of Britishers, that is Britishers and the private entrepreneurs have started this company in India to start up the trade with the Indian regions. So the first Britisher, Sir Thomas Roy, approached to Mughal Emperor Jahangir and took permission to build factory in Surat, and the first factory that has been built in India was in Surat in 1615. Then within 10 years another factory opened in Bombay, which became headquarters of EEIC, that is English East India Company. Soon the Indian region was divided into three presidencies under the control of the Britishers, that is Calcutta, Bombay and Madras. You know, company cleverly followed a triangular trade in the country. They exchanged English gold and silver coins for Indian goods. Then they utilized these in China to get the high prices of commodities. With the system, company earned huge profits and become richer. Then the company, was corrupt. They started malpractices, fraud, and drained their profits in England. This increased need to collect higher revenues. Poor landowners forced to pay their taxes in cash, and the taxes were too high. That they in turn approached to the companies for the rebate, but they had not heard their complaints. So in 1757, a military force led by Robert Clive defeated the army of Nawab of Bengal, that is Siraj-ud-Daulah, and started their rule in Bengal. Bengal was earlier a very rich province of India, but later on Britishers do the partition and first took control on Bengal. In 1765, they took control over Bengal. They also exercised right to collect revenues. Lagan, on the behalf of Mughal Emperor in Bihar and Odisha. But the main mistake is of Mughal Emperor Farooq Shah, who gave this right, Diwani rights to them. So they considered themselves as the real owners of the various reasons. The British justified their rule by claims that there was a need for Indians to civilize. You know why they claim this? Because earlier in India, various ill practices like sati pratha, widow remarriages not allowed, child marriages going on. These are the ill practices that we also understand that not fair to be followed in our custom. Because this created various issues and force the women to do sati, that is to give away their life with their men. So they sought to replace Indian customs with a more reliable method of justice, law and fair play. They considered that women and men are equivalent, so they are also having right to live. So they banned few practices like sati pratha and child marriage and well system, so which angered Indians, so they started protesting against them. Let's see. Then over the next few decades, under the Governor Generals Dalhousie and Canning, the British took over even more territories under their control by various methods like the policy of doctrine of lapse. In doctrine of lapse, the king who is not having any legal son, after his death, that kingdom will directly comes under the sovereignty or the control of the Britishers. So this happened with Sambhalpur, Bhagat, Jhansi, Nagpur and Awadh, because they are not having legal son, they are having adopted son. So the Britishers took more territories due to these policies. The British could not take over Punjab because Sikhs were dominant force under King Ranjit Singh. Punjab was safe from British invasion till Ranjit Singh's death. After his death, the British forces started moving in, bringing an end to the Sikh Empire, which they proved in 1839 by seizing Sindh, Karachi, Sukkur, Bukur one by one, all the regions under Sikh Empire. Now, let's see what are the modern movements over there. First, the Sipai Mutiny. I think you people know more about Mangal Pandey. In fact, you have watched a movie of Amir Khan that is completely based on Sipai Mutiny. You know, at that time, the Indian Sipais were also admitted in the military force. But at the time, Britishers introduced one gun that that cartridges is made up of pig and cow grease, which is forbidden in both the Hindu and Muslim religion. So the Sipai started revolting against this. Let's have a look on Sipai Mutiny. You know, earlier this was the structure of the Hindustan. Pakistan was under the Hindustan only. See, this way they have to open the cartridges and it is forbidden to touch the pig and cow fat. So how could they open it with their mouth?
And Hindu soldiers. In 1857, 3 regiments of the army refused to use the ammunition of the Enfield Rifles and demanded that Bahadur Shah Zafar take over as the ruler of India and the head of the rebel.
You know what? The Sipai started this revolt, and this is also called military revolt or the immediate cause because it started before the plot. Earlier the Indian rulers planned that they will start the revolt or the protest against the Britishers in June. But this started in May only, from 10th May, because the Sipais didn't want to touch the cartridges that is made of pig and cow fat. So how could they open it from their mouth? Because it is forbidden in their religion. You very well know about it because it is forbidden till now also. So that's why the Brahmin soldiers and the Muslim soldiers started revolt.
Is one of the most famous.
He is a Brahmin soldier.
Who attacked the.
He is a Brahmin soldier of Barakpur cantonment and he started this revolt. And the Sipais wanted Bahadur Shah Zafar, the Mughal emperor, to be the new leader of this revolt. This revolt is also called the Revolt of 1857 or the First War of Indian Independence.
British regiment.
See.
He was later arrested and hanged. This uprising came to be known as the Sepoy Mutiny or the.
He is not hanged for the revolt he raised. He hanged because he killed one of his officers.
Revolt of 1857. Soon after, another regiment revolted. 90,000 men from the Bengal army joined the mutiny. After suffering major losses in Kanpur and Lucknow, the British sought the help of the loyal Sikh and Gurkha forces.
Now they took help from Sikh and Gurkha forces to control all the revolts in Delhi.
In response to the mutiny, the British Parliament passed an act abolishing the East India Company. India became a crown colony to be governed by the British Parliament directly. In the following year, the title of Viceroy was bestowed upon the Governor General of India by Queen Victoria.
A new title has been given by the Queen Victoria to his officials,
which prevented Indians from uniting to rebel against her.
Now let's see the Indian movements. See, these are the revolts that is led during the revolt of 1857. that is in
Rani
Jhansi.
Lakshmibai.
You people have very well heard about Rani Lakshmibai. Let's see what are the steps taken by Rani Lakshmibai to save her territory.
Rani of Jhansi was the queen of the Maratha-ruled princely state of Jhansi, situated in the northern part of India. Her father worked at the Peshwa court of Vithu, and because of his influence at court, Lakshmi Bai had more independence than most women. She studied self-defense, horsemanship, archery, and even formed her own army out of her female friends at court. Lakshmi Bai was married to Raja Gangadhar Rao Niwaz,
See,
the Maharaja of Jhansi in 1842 at the early age of 7.
she was married at the age of
Her
7.
son Damodar Rao in 1851. However, the child died when he was about 4 months old. After his death, the Raja and Rani of Jhansi adopted Anand Rao. It is said that Gangadhar never recovered from his son's death and died on 21st November 1853. Lord Dalhousie, the Governor General of India at that time, tried to take advantage of the misfortune of Jhansi to expand the British Empire. In 1854, Rani of Jhansi was granted an annual pension of 60,000 and was ordered to leave the Jhansi fort. She was, however, firm on the decision to not give up the dominion of Jhansi to Britishers.
So she fought bravely
For strengthening the
to
defense
defeat
of
the
Jhansi,
Britishers.
Rani Lakshmi Bai assembled an army of rebels which also included women. For this great cause, she was also supported by great warriors like Ghulam Ghaus Khan, Dost Khan and Diwan Jawahar Singh. On 10th May 1857, the Indian rebellion started in Meerut. This began after the rumor that new bullet casings for the Enfield rifles were coated with pork and beef fat, and unrest began to spread throughout India. Rani Lakshmi Bai had always been hesitant about rebelling against the British. Her hesitation eventually came to an end when British troops arrived under Sir Hugh Rose and laid siege to Jhansi on 23rd March 1858. Along with the young Damodar Rao, the Rani decamped to Kalpi along with her troops, where she joined other rebel forces including those of Tatya Tope. However, on 17th June 1858, while battling against the 8th Hussars in Kotaki Serai,
Rani got martyrdom.
She was killed in battle.
She got martyrdom.
British captured Gwalior 3 days later. In the British report of the battle, General Sir Hugh Rose commented that the Rani, remarkable for her beauty, cleverness and perseverance, had been
In fact, the British leader itself said that Rani was a remarkable of beauty, intelligence and bravery, and she died while fighting with the Britishers and saving her motherland.
Her adopted son Damodar Rao fled with his mother's aides.
So this is about one of the most important warrior of the revolt of 1857. Let's see about the others in the next. Now we have started with the Indian national movement. Let's see what are the movements that have been started in India during the time of Britishers. In 1877, British started a program of reforms, that is to make the changes in the society. They tried to integrate high caste Indians and rulers to make all these changes and help them in making these changes. But Britishers felt that they could civilize the Indians by giving them more manners and education, by getting them converted into Christianity, because they think that the religion they are following, that is Hinduism or the Islam, that is having various ill practices in it, so they want to westernize them by converting them into Christianity and introducing a westernized system of education. So this class class of people found their way into government. These are lawyers, businessmen, journalists, teachers, and the other educational class. Such people started protesting against the discrimination by the Britishers because they wanted the country as it was earlier. Now these protests led to the formation of a new committee or an institution, that is Indian National Congress in 1885. You know, the Congress became the dividing force between the freedom struggle, because earlier there was a moderate phase and later on there was extremist phase. Congress gave Indian nationalism a distinct Hindu and Muslim culture. This annihilation led to the formation of the All India Muslim League in 1906. So Muhammad Ali Jinnah was an important member of the Congress who worked towards a separate state for the Muslim Pakistan, because he was thinking that equal status to the Muslims has not been given in Indian National Congress as well as in Hindustan. So he started working on a separate nation, that is Pakistan. This caused major issues between the two religious groups, which led to violence, bloodshed during the time of partition. Bal Gangadhar Tilak believed that Swaraj was every Indian's birthright. In fact, he gave one slogan that Swaraj is my birthright and I will have it anyhow. We are not going to dominate it by the foreign people. So he wanted to assault the Britishers directly. These are the leaders who changed the scenario of the Indian independence. Other rebels carried out a campaign of terror, assassination against the British, which are also known as revolutionaries like Chandrasekhar Azad, Sukhdev. So the Swadeshi movement was born, and the Indians protesting backward of foreign goods through strikes and protests under Mahatma Gandhi. Finally, the Britishers revoked the partition. Their motive was to separate Hindus and Muslims and to break the unity. At the time of independence, you know, two countries were partition, that is Pakistan and India. Later on, during the time of Indira Gandhi Prime Ministership, Bangladesh was also separated from India. Now let's see the freedom struggle.
Were known for their peaceful methods, such as Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna,
Who was Swami Vivekananda, who was called the Iron Man of India.
Tagore, and many others started spreading the word to the people.
You know, Swami Vivekananda, who was the Home Minister at the time of Indian independence, he joined all the states together, and he is the one who stopped the assimilation of few Indian states into the Pakistan.
That everyone must be passionate about gaining freedom. After World War I, the British imposed stricter legislation in India to curb the people they felt were political extremists. While all hope was diminishing, emerged a man whom the country began to revere, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Gandhi became the undisputed leader of the freedom struggle.
See,
He advocated the policy
he respects all the
civil
religions.
disobedience. Mahatma Gandhi, as he was known, inspired millions to follow in his path. His vision took the freedom struggle to the national level. On 13th April 1919, the British, led by General Dyer, massacred hundreds of unarmed civilians, including women and children.
You know, on 13 April 1919, to stop the protests in Punjab, that is in Amritsar, a meeting was going on in Amritsar on the day of Baisakhi on 13 April 1919 to protest against Rowlatt Act. And it was a peaceful protest. Many men, women, children, old people, all of them were gathered there. But General Dyer, who was having civilian control of Punjab at that time, entered in Jallianwala Bagh and closed the single entry, the single gate of Jallianwala Bagh, and ordered his troops to do open fire on the people till the cartridges ended. You know, almost 1,000 people were killed because many were killed by bullets and many were jumped into the well. So almost, according to the Congress estimate, 1,000 people were killed, but according to the British estimates or the statistics, only 379 people were killed. Obviously, they will show the less number because they were really criticized on this issue at the international platform. Let's see about it.
who were attending a meeting. This incident is known as the Jallianwala Bagh tragedy in Amritsar, which triggered off nationwide hatred for the British rule. In response, Gandhi launched the non-cooperation
See,
movement.
in this,
He urged the people to refuse.
Gandhiji was very angered and disheartened by this act. So he started a peaceful non-cooperation movement in India, in which he requested the people to not get their children admitted in the Britishers' schools and colleges, and he also urged the people to resign from the British government jobs, colleges, and not to use foreign goods that is completely produced or manufactured by the Britishers, so that we can make Britishers economically weak in India.
Used to pay taxes and forsake British titles and honours. This was a serious problem for the government. Gandhi
Under this
embarked
he
on a
launched
mission of
Dandi
about
March.
400 kilometers from Ahmedabad to Dandi.
You know, earlier there was a ban on making or producing salt also. You know, salt is a very important ingredient of the food. The food becomes tasteless if salt is not there. So, at that time, Britishers put huge amount of taxes on the salt also, because they know it is the most usable ingredient in India. So there was a ban on making salt also, and Britishers were selling salt at a very huge rate. They established monopoly on all the trade. Monopoly means sole right to do any kind of trade. So Mahatma Gandhi started non-cooperating with the Britishers with this Dandi March by producing salt. Let's see about Dandi March.
Famously known as the Dandi March. And at Dandi, the law was broken by making salt from seawater. The British responded by making widespread arrests and firing on the crowds. Gandhi too was sent to jail a number of times. Armed rebellions against the British continued to grow in several parts.
Now, when the non-violence activities are not linked any effect on the Britishers, various young people of India like Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, Sukhdev, they started the revolutionary activities by killing the British officers and by planting bombs in the government offices
of India. Leaders such as Bhagat Singh and Chandrasekhar Azad led acts of violence against the British. But soon, the revolutionary activities died down and many rebel leaders joined political parties.
And many revolutionaries were hanged also by the Britishers. So that's why the revolutionary activities ended in India. Let's see another movement of Mahatma Gandhi, that is Quit India movement, that is Britishers should leave anyhow India. It was launched by Mahatma Gandhi in 1942 to protest against sending Indian troops to fight in World War II and demanding the immediate independence of India. The Quit India movement shows after talks between the Congress and the Britishers had failed. That's why it started. Indians were now urged to get an independent nation, in which they are having their own rules, own regulations and constitution. So mass protests were going all over the countries, which were followed by bomb attacks, sabotage, violence everywhere. The Muslim League declared support for the British because they want a separate nation. So Britishers took the advantage of this. The Britishers responded to the protest by implementing heavy fines and air dropping of bombs everywhere, because the situation is now out of their control. The rebel movement now gained violence. Now it adopted violence to gain independence, was now working against Gandhi's principle of non-violence. This left the movement leaderless. Now in 1946, the Royal Indian Army called a strike and Indian sailors to mutinied. Now they protested against the Britishers. Soon the Air Force and the local police forces joined in. There were more riots and revolts. Violence spread all over the country. Now let's see another movement of nationalism in India. Subhash Chandra Bose. See what role he had played in the movement.
Subhash Chandra Bose was born on 23rd January 1897 to Janakinath Bose, a well-reputed advocate, and Prabhavati Devi. Subhash Chandra Bose's nationalistic temperament first came to light at the Presidency College, Calcutta, when he was rusticated for assaulting Professor Otten for his anti-India comments. During the mid-1930s, Bose travelled in Europe, visiting Indian students and European politicians.
See, he went to Europe to inculcate the feelings of independence among the Indians.
And fascism in action. In 1938, he had become a leader of national stature and agreed to accept the nomination as Congress President. He stood for Swaraj, self-governance. But this, however, meant a confrontation with Gandhi, which also created a rift between him and Nehru. On the outbreak of World War II, Bose advocated a campaign of mass civil disobedience to protest against Viceroy Lord Linlithgow's decision to declare war on India's behalf without consulting the Congress leadership. Bose organized mass protests in Calcutta calling for the Holwell Monument, which then stood at the corner of Dalhousie Square, to be removed. Bose was thrown into jail but was released following a 7-day hunger strike.
So this is about Subhash Chandra Bose.
Was kept under surveillance by the CID following his release.
You know, the
Splendid escape.
British government was now spying on Subhash Chandra Bose, that whatever the activities he is planning, they get aware of that so that they can stop them for adopting any protest or anything against them.
The help of his nephew, Cecil K. Bose, in a car dressed as a Pathan, sporting a long beard which he grew overnight.
See, he went away from his house in a disguise of Pathan to conduct or continue his independence
Bose
activities.
escaped to Germany via Afghanistan.
Then he went to Germany through Afghanistan.
In Germany to Hitler and Bose. I
He
swear
made to Hitler.
this holy oath that I will obey the leader of the German race and state, Adolf Hitler, as the commander of the German armed forces in the fight for India, whose leader is Subhash Chandra Bose. Matters worsened when the now retreating German army would be in no position to offer him help in driving the British from India. So, in 1943, Bose turned his back on his legionaries and slipped secretly away aboard a submarine bound for Japan. Traveling on board the German submarine U-180 around the Cape of Good Hope to Imperial Japan by a Japanese submarine I-29. This was the only civilian transfer between two submarines of two different navies in World War II. The idea of a liberation army was revived with the help of Subhash
You know,
Chandra Bose.
Subhash Chandra Bose also made an Indian association which named as Indian National Army INA. He also gave various slogans. The famous one are तुम मुझे खून दो मैं तुम्हें आज़ादी दूंगा. That means you have to shed your blood for the country, then only you will get independence, then only I can bring independence for you. Second is Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. That means only the Jawan, that is the soldiers and the farmers, are responsible for creating or building a nation.
In the Far East in 1943. Bose took control of the Indian National Army
See, he made
and was
Indian
able
National
to
Army.
reorganize the fledgling army and gathered massive support among the expatriate Indian population in Southeast Asia.
Many young people admitted into his army.
Speech for the Indian National Army at a rally of Indians in Burma on July 4, 1944. Bose's most famous quote was, "Give me blood and I shall give you freedom."
See.
In this, he urged the people of India to join him in his fight against the British Raj. The INA's first commitment was in the Japanese thrust towards the eastern Indian frontiers of Manipur. The INA and Japanese also took possession of Andaman and Nicobar Islands.
You know, Japan was helping Subhash Chandra Bose against Britishers,
which had a significant impact on the Indian National Army. The Japanese could no longer fund their armies and eventually surrendered. The
Japanese
army
surrendered.
were no match for the British troops without the help of the Japanese, and therefore surrendered to the British as well.
Now, what alone Subhash Chandra Bose could do, so he also surrendered against the British army. He surrendered to the British army.
The disappearance and eventual death of Bose. Though it is said that he is alleged
You know, the death of Subhash Chandra Bose was still a mystery. Nobody found his dead body because it was come to know that he was died in an aeroplane crash, but still it is not confirmed.
In a plane crash in Taipei, Taiwan, on 18 August 1945, while en route to Tokyo. The Imperial Japanese Air Force bomber he was traveling on had engine trouble, and when it crashed, Bose was badly burned, dying in a local hospital a few hours later.
We will continue with Indian independence and the various other movements which help us in getting freedom from the British Raj. Let us see in the second part of our video. Alright, this is all for today. Thank you everyone for watching.